We are currently in Carmine Street Comics in Manhattan's West Village. And we're here to continue our discussion on the Superman films. We went from the Chris Reeve franchise. Now we're going to the Superman reboots, or Superman Redux, the CineFiles special. Nice. And before we get into Superman Returns, which is the next film we're going to talk about, let me give it over to our guest host. Here we have Jeff Galashaw. Hey there. Looking handsomer than usual. And Mr. Michael Foltz is back with us, back from the dead. Been to hell and back, and in hell again, and back again.
What a long, strange trip it's been.
Where we left off with was Quest for Peace. Quest for Peace, Superman 4, which we all unanimously agreed was a piece of crap, and it almost killed the entire franchise for a while. There's one film we didn't mention was Supergirl. I think the less said about that, the better. There's really nothing to say about Supergirl. Do you have anything to say about Supergirl?
I actually thought what's her name, Helen, whatever her name was pretty
Slater.
hot. Helen Slater was kind of hot for a while. She would never do nude scenes, which was very disappointing. And Faye Dunaway being like a black magic sorceress, that was an odd choice of a villain.
Was that an actual DC canon villain?
No, it was not.
Huh. But it had Peter O'Toole in it.
Peter O'Toole was like her mentor?
Yeah, that's the only thing I remember about it.
That was actually really in the comics. Peter O'Toole was an actual character named Peter O'Toole in the Supergirl comics.
And he was drunk all the time.
All the time.
All the time. Anyway, so the less said about that, the better. For a long time, there were no Superman flicks. There was the Superman Lives project that Kevin Smith was going to write. The whole John Peters debacle. You know, they want, giant spiders, polar bears, the whole
he got his
yards.
giant spider.
Was the villain going to be
West.
Brainiac or Lex Luthor? There's like all the stuff they wanted to throw in there.
Tim Burton.
Nick Cage. And the pictures have recently been released online. At first I thought the project was just a rumor, a myth, until those pictures got released. Did you see those pictures of his bad Superman suit?
Yes.
So anyway, we go from that to an attempt to do a J.J. Abrams script called Superman Flyby, which sounded awful. But, the whole idea that Krypton never exploded, there's a civil war, and they sent Kal-El out to, Earth to protect him from the civil war that's going on, but he's the only one that can go back and lead the rebellion against the bad guys, led by the brother of Jor-El. Apparently it was the original plot. Not only that, but Lex Luthor wasn't the Lex Luthor in the comics. He was a CIA kind of Man in Black character.
Who turned out to be a Kryptonian.
Right.
And that's when the whole thing, it was...
There's a little too much.
It was an okay read, and then it just fell into like a shithole.
Worse and worse and worse. But that was a project that Brett Ratner was originally attached to, right?
Why does that not surprise you?
Right.
And that was McG when Brett Ratner.
McG at one point. They were talking about anyone from your favorite Josh Hartnett to Jude Law as Superman, right?
I remember
Ray Fiennes as Luthor.
Brendan Fraser turned him down 4 times.
First one we're going to talk about, Superman Returns.
Must we?
Bryan Singer was approached by Warner Brothers to sort of reboot the project, and he pitched them with the idea of actually, no, let's make this a sort of sequel homage to the Chris Reeve Superman universe. So technically it's supposed to take place in that same universe, and the idea is let's just pretend Superman 3 and 4 never happened, and this is the direct sequel to Superman 2. And the premise was, if you haven't seen the film, Superman has been missing for, 5 years or something like that.
5 or 10.
He was trying to search his roots in Krypton, comes back to Earth, finds out Lois Lane has a kid by him, turned out to be a deadbeat dad. She's engaged to be married to Perry White's, nephew or something like that? I can't even remember. Who cares?
James Marsden.
Right, James Marsden, and you had Kevin Spacey taking over the role from Gene Hackman.
Parker Posey,
kind of playing the Miss Tessmacher role.
Which was one of the reasons I wanted to see that film.
Right. And you said the casting of Kevin Spacey was inspired. I thought it was obvious. I thought it was obvious casting.
Well, if you're dealing with Bryan Singer, yeah.
Yes, friends of Bryan Singer. Kate Bosworth came in because she was friends with Kevin Spacey.
Don't remind me.
The last person you want to cast is Lois Lane.
Because they did the To the Sea, the Bobby Darin biopic.
I don't think it's 100% absolute failure, but I would say probably an 80% failure. There are certain things I like in it. I don't think it's Brandon Routh's fault because all he is really a placeholder for Christopher Reeve. They didn't give him anything to do, really, except...
What do you mean by placeholder?
He looks exactly like Christopher Reeve. They don't really give him much to say. All he has to do is give a look. And so it's felt like he's like a mannequin in the suit, and there's nothing really called for him to do in any of the scenes, really. I mean, he might say a line here or there, but you never really get to know him as Superman, or even as Clark Kent. And the rest of the movie, it just seemed like tonal shifts, because you have Parker Posey, who can do drama and can do comedy, but it seemed like more of her role was pure comedy until like the last scene where they actually asked her to be dramatic, and it was just, the film was all over the place. Kate Bosworth's Lois Lane gets into all these calamities and gets so much head trauma, you're shocked she's still alive by the end of the film. And really, the only action sequence that was notable was like the plane almost crashing and him saving it. Other than that, that was really the only good action scene. And the whole thing, okay, here's where we really start having problems, was you have Kal Penn, who at the time was hot from Harold and Kumar, and then you have him say nothing the whole film. I don't know if that was editing or if that was just by design.
The camera was on his face a lot.
Exactly.
To remind us that he was in the movie.
But he said nothing. And then when you get to Luthor's plan, all it is like a real estate development plan gone wrong.
And if you think about it, once we see that continent come birth towards the end, who the hell's gonna live there?
Nobody wants to live there.
You gotta be a serious mountain climber to enjoy any of that real estate.
Yes.
That made no sense. Like, this was not exactly, you know, the Fertile Triangle in Mesopotamia. I mean, this was
exactly.
This basically you're living on cliffs.
And then the symbolism of Christ-like that Bryan Singer keeps going with it just got annoying after a while. Like,
well, to be fair, they do some of that in the film we're going to talk about after this.
I know, but still, here to me it was more noticeable while I was watching it than after when I'm thinking about it.
They should just cut to the chase and do a Super Christ film.
Yeah, well, I mean, look, the film is very well made.
Yeah.
Visually, it's stunning. You know, it's a little overlong.
Very.
And what's really interesting is when it came out, we forget this, it actually got pretty good reviews.
Didn't do well at the box office.
Actually, that's not true.
The first weekend it did well.
First good weekend, and then it really tapered off. I remember
it did,
that.
but it still did well enough that they greenlit a sequel, and they were going to prepare to do that sequel, and all things fell apart for Bryan Singer.
But it wasn't short-lived after that. They admitted that it wasn't the hit that they wanted it to be. I think actually Superman Returns really hurt Bryan Singer's career, because it seemed like he was on a real good trajectory after X-Men 2.
Yeah.
And then it just kind of went down a little bit.
My biggest problem with the film is why did it need to be in a Chris Reeve universe? Why did it have to do that?
I think from the very beginning, I think that Singer wanted this to be an homage to everything Donner.
Exactly.
Right.
And he was so in the lap of Richard Donner on this that he was going to do everything by the book, by the numbers.
And he went to Donner to get his blessing.
Yes.
Apparently.
Which was unnecessary.
But it was unnecessary because none of the characters resembled the characters from in terms of characterization. I mean, Kate Bosworth from Margot Kidder.
I found that.
Seriously?
Who's a single mother who looks like she's all of 19.
I found that the Kevin Spacey Luthor was completely, I don't know, it was obvious and it was clunky. You felt like Luthor is a guy that sits there and he schemes.
Right.
He's smart. He's ruthless. He's not afraid to show you a good side once in a while, but overall he's a ruthless schemer. You know, and he's very intelligent, extremely intelligent. Here you get a ham bone. Kevin Spacey was a ham bone. And the worst critique I can give of the Superman Returns is, for the most part, it was pretty boring.
Yeah.
Yes.
It was a pretty boring film. And look, I will be the first one to tell you guys and anybody else, I am not a Superman fan. I never have been. Never liked Superman, never liked the character, but yet when a movie comes up, I am interested in seeing it. I want to see whose interpretation of Superman is gonna, make screens go on fire and everything. I'm always curious about the films. Never really curious about the TV shows. I'm the character. I'm more of a Batman guy.
Also, there's been a lot of permutations to the comic book character. I mean, we got into a big debate on this in the Facebook group, and it's like, you got people saying, "Oh, this movie is a true Superman movie because it's truest to this character." I'm like, "What character are you talking about?"
Not true.
Superman, what's truest to the character? What, we said it in 1938, and he's just fighting, bad, Asian stereotypes. You mean that Superman, or what are we talking about?
Yeah, Nazi gangsters.
Right, Nazi gangsters. Right. Exactly. What do you think about his Super Kid?
Oh, I'd rather forget
that. That was the equivalent of, when Roland Emmerich made Godzilla and decided to put velociraptors on Godzilla's back, or
or the baby Godzilla.
Yeah, the baby Godzillas.
Right.
That was the equivalent. It's like, oh, fuck off.
It was.
That's terrible.
But
actually.
anyways, George Miller was going to direct the Justice League motion capture film, and then they pulled out of that project. It looked like it was going to happen. They were close to shooting it, and then the studios pulled out.
I think it was going to shoot in Australia. Even.
Do we know why that's the case? Because I know a lot of it had to do with economy, and like the studios at the time.
I don't think they wanted to risk.
Was that the writer's strike issue?
Yeah, there was also budgetary reasons because Miller could not agree with the studio on the size of the budget.
Right.
He wanted like 180 million. They were only willing to give him either 100 or 120. It was budgetary.
I would have loved to have seen what Miller would have done with that.
I think he's a creative man.
I would have loved to have seen what he had done with that. I'm not sure about the whole motion capture thing, but I would love to see what he had done with that. But anyways, and somewhere there was the Batman versus Superman project, fell in there somewhere. That director, Wolfgang Peterson was attached to that. Warner Brothers decided they wanted to reboot the Superman franchise again. And it was David Goyer who had pitched an idea to Chris Nolan. And the idea was like taking the idea of Superman and kind of bring it to that grounded, sort of like serious tone that Nolan developed with the Batman films. Nolan loved the idea, so he went with Goyer and pitched this idea to Warner Brothers. And they loved it, and so Nolan agreed to oversee this project. And they selected Zack Snyder. I think it was initially rumored that Michael Bay was going to direct it at first. Remember, on his blog, he had this cryptic announcement where it had the Superman symbol one day, and everyone thought, "Oh, does this mean Michael Bay's directing the new Superman film?" And then he took it off. I guess,
thankfully,
he was mistaken about that. But anyway, so now we got Man of Steel, directed by Zack Snyder, overseen by Chris Nolan, written by David Goyer, and starring Henry Cavill, who's somewhat unknown, but sort of making a name for himself in the Tudors and stuff like that.
Immortals.
Henry Cavill was also the second actor they had chosen to play James Bond next to Daniel Craig.
A lot younger Bond.
Yes, a lot younger Bond. He and Craig were the only actors that actually screen tested for the role. They always wanted Craig for the role, but just in case, they had Cavill ready.
I think there's like a 14-year difference between those two guys.
There is. Well, the Casino Royale script requires Bond to be young, but they felt that in the end, Cavill was too young. But anyways, he's old enough now. Who knows if they'll return to Cavill and say, "Hey, you want the role now?" No, he's Superman now. And the thing is about the film is it's a very polarizing film. It has its fans.
That might be the understatement of all the shows
The fans
so far.
are absolutely apoplectic over, in like the positive direction over this film, whereas there are people out there that's like, what is the big deal? The film isn't that good. But what I think is interesting, a lot of people are comparing it to Prometheus and how that polarized people. And I kind of differ on that because with the criticisms against Prometheus are pretty consistent. Whereas with Man of Steel, you have different opinions as to why they didn't like it. And some of them do contradict, and there's different opinions as to why the fans like it, and some of those opinions contradict each other. So anyway, so Man of Steel.
I went in with kind of low expectations. Once again, not a Superman fan, and honestly, Zack Snyder's last effort with
Sucker Punch
made me a little skittish. I'm a Zack Snyder fan. I've liked all his other work, except the Owl movie and Sucker Punch. So I was a little skittish, but I thought David Goyer's got a good hand on writing not only movies, but a good hand on writing superhero films. So I went in very low expectations, and other than a few things here and there, I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a great cinema experience, in a great popcorn cinema experience.
Okay.
And the girlfriend liked it. I was pleasantly surprised at that. My only criticism is, well, I have a couple.
Okay.
One, Superman, the fans that wanted fight scenes in Superman Returns, boy, did they get them here in plenty. A little overkill in the last 10 minutes. And at some point, knowing the character of Superman from the comic books, me being a comic book reader, I mean, you'd have to be a half-wit not to follow Superman.
But you're not a fan of Superman.
I'm not a fan of Superman, but you're aware of his goings-on, especially if you read like Justice League or any of the other stuff. Superman is not going to allow...
Spoiler.
I'm sorry, spoiler alert. Superman is not going to allow 17 skyscrapers to fall on people as he's fighting other Kryptonians. Right. At some point, he's going to take them to the desert. He's going to fly them to the Antarctica.
Well, you got fans out there going to like respond and say, well, he did that with Doomsday. He did that with Doomsday.
That's true. Well, yeah.
That's one permutation of the character.
And like you said earlier, there are many permutations of the character. What I did enjoy is everything Krypton. Everything Krypton was kick-ass.
Interesting.
How they sent him into the Phantom Zone was amazing. I thought that was great. Michael Shannon as Zod was wonderful. And Russell Crowe was a kick-ass Jor-El, which took me completely... it took me right in left field.
You see, I had the opposite reaction. I didn't realize Kryptonians were the Neuromancers from Chronicles of Riddick.
But just to be fair, those costumes are from a mini-series when John Byrne was doing it. So
I honestly didn't have a problem with the design of Krypton. I just thought the whole Krypton thing was overly complicated.
With the Codex.
The Codex, the whole thing, the flying animals and stuff like that. I was just like, you know what? This is all so unnecessary. It's all about spectacle. It's all about showing off. And I was like, what does that have to do with the story? You know, and I just thought that to justify getting Russell Crowe in there, you know, because whatever paycheck he got, they really pushed that, you know, he's a part of the conscious now. That's why Superman sees him all the time, kind of thing. And I don't think it really did anything for their relationship.
No. Russell Crowe, Jor-El, was not a part of the Codex. He was
he's part of his conscious.
He basically uploaded his conscious into a Kryptonian computer inside the Fortress of Solitude. That's how you saw him.
That was unnecessary. I think the movie needed that.
Oh, I thought that was kind of cool. I liked it.
I thought the way they handled it with Brando was just, you know, that's all you need. You got it. But anyways, I'm sorry, I cut you off.
I wasn't saying anything.
No, I cut him off.
Before I give the floor to Jeff here, I will say I thought Henry Cavill was a effective Superman. Didn't say a whole lot, but I liked him.
I agree with that.
Amy Adams as this globe-trotting investigative journalist, Lois Lane. I didn't mind that. I know some people did not care for it. I didn't mind it.
Yeah, I thought if I liked a character, it's because the actor's playing it, and not because it was a good character. Just because you have Amy Adams play a role and slap the name Lois Lane on it doesn't make it Lois Lane. I defended the casting choice of Lawrence Fishburne as Perry White, but anybody could play that role.
What'd you guys think of Kevin Costner?
You know, he gave it a lot of, you know, gravitas, you know, that part. But at the same time, you know, it's like, okay, so basically Pa Kent is scolding his son for saving a bunch of lives.
Until it was the right time.
And there's a difference. I didn't see any character development in those flashback scenes. I just saw a lot of lecturing. We're being told a lot what we're supposed to think about these characters, but we weren't being shown what to think about these characters. That's my problem with Man of Steel.
Okay.
Is that everything was like you know what, we're just going to shortcut everything, and everything else will just tell the audience, and that's all we need to do. Because there was no, I didn't feel like there's anything memorable in the dialogue in this film. I don't remember a single line.
Not really.
And I thought that in the acting style, everybody was just pretty much like, oh, there's a man who can fly. Oh, let's save her. You know, stuff like that. I don't have a problem with the idea with Superman being complicit in the death of thousands of people and not lifting a finger to help them. I have a problem that they didn't address the consequences. Okay, so if this happens, does Clark Kent as Superman, does he bear any kind of burden of guilt or anything about that? I mean, it
reminds me a lot of Star Trek Into Darkness.
Yeah.
Almost the same exact thing.
If you start your film like this is our serious approach, we're going to do this in a serious way, then it's like, okay, well, follow through on that conviction, then you're going to present serious problems that require serious responses and consequences. And there was none of that in this film, just none of it. I felt like I got a Cliff Notes version of David Goyer's screenplay with audio-visual accompaniment. That's what it felt like to me, which is odd for a film that was like over 2 hours long.
What I found just interesting was it just looked like the approach was, let's take a shaky handheld cam and show the origin of Superman and show, you know, different scenes. That's just from the trailer. From what I saw in the movie, Krypton, it was interesting, but I felt it was more to entertain the audience. I didn't feel like all that was necessary for the story. It was necessary for the film story, but not necessary for the story in general.
So you're thinking it was more of a visual treat than...
Exactly, because like the whole escape, riding that winged butterfly.
Visually, it's wonderful.
Yeah,
visually, I thought my issue with the film was going to be Zack Snyder. Because I found myself enjoying his films less and less whenever he's come out with a new film. I blame the screenwriter, and I actually blame whatever Nolan's influence was on this film. That's my personal thing. But I thought visually Zack Snyder did actually a really good job. It was a little more contained than he usually is.
But here's my problem with the whole film. This is a over $200 million budgeted film. We're going all around the world. We're going into space. But why does it feel so small and compact? It feels like everything happens within
Compact or claustrophobic?
No, compact, because it feels like everything happens in a certain space. It doesn't feel open. It doesn't feel big.
For a film that wants to be epic, it doesn't feel epic.
Yeah, exactly. It just to me, the whole time I was thinking, you know, other than the flying scenes, but everything seems to come back to like the farm. You know, this is where we're going to have the battle. This is where we're going to go find his family for obvious reasons. But it was like, and then they have this big climactic fight, and it goes to, what was it, the IHOP that his childhood friend managed. And then you see him look at him, and that's the last you ever see of him for the whole film. So it was like, what was that moment for?
Were you guys as aware as I was during the film? This took me out of it a little bit. This was annoying. Of all the product placement.
Yeah, I
there's
noticed
a lot of
that.
product
IHOP, Nikon, Sears.
Mm-hmm.
After a while, that got on my nerves a little bit.
So did Amy Adams' hands. She has old hands. But see, that's what takes me out of films. That shows you how
I don't recall there was any like close up on her hands in the movie.
No, there was a scene
She
where
pretended to be blind and helped Superman.
No, when she's
mold
talking
the
to
mold.
Perry White, she has like her sleeves up here, and I just kept looking at her hands, and I thought those were old lady hands.
Oh, I hated that whole thing with the tornado. I hated that.
I was laughing.
Where
during it.
Pac just gets whisked away.
like-
To me, that was a great example of how poorly written the script was. Because prior to that, he had told his father, "You're not my real father." Is that the last words he would have wanted to tell his father before he saw him about to die? I don't think so.
That's like screenplay writing 101, though.
Exactly. It is screenplay writing 101, which they completely got an F on in this movie.
But I'm thinking maybe more, like, since you keep complaining about the screenplay, maybe they noticed the mistakes of the previous film, and so they were trying to give the fans more of what they wanted.
You know what they needed to do? They needed to have Clark Kent figure out a way to save his father without breaking his promise to his father, and he does, and he manages to do that, and the excitement and everything, his father dies anyway. And that would send two messages. That one, Clark Kent can step up to the plate as Superman, even if it means defying his own father, and two, there are just some things Superman can't save, no matter how hard he tries.
I would have liked to see Jonathan Kent just not scold him all the time. Like, they have that one moment at the end of the film where he's running around with the towel.
What do you think of Martha Kent? I thought that was kind of, they didn't really do anything with her, except
That's
be there
exactly why I
and-
have no comment on her.
I actually
Diane
liked
Lane
it. I
just
like
kinda-
the scene.
I like Diane
like the
Lane.
scene with her in the school.
Oh,
at the
when she's
beginning.
trying to
I
calm
like
him
that
that.
was
down.
nice.
Find a nice place. I like that. I thought
I
that was
agree
an
with that.
effective scene.
What do you think of Man of Steel as a Superman adaptation, as a comic book movie?
I mean, I didn't have any major problems with it. I found it, like as he said with the popcorn blockbuster, I found it perfectly entertaining while I'm sitting there. I mean, there'll be some things I might remember, you know, afterwards or bring it up, but I wouldn't put it like as one of my favorite of all time comic book adaptation. But one note, I know this is slightly comedic. Diane Lane played elderly Ma Kent, didn't have elderly hands.
How it falls into the Superman canon, I think it reflected on the comic books really well, especially the Krypton part. I loved Zod. One thing that I really loved is the whole idea that Kryptonians were basically coming to terraform Earth. And the whole device to terraform Earth was pretty cool. I liked it. I liked the idea that it was basically pulverizing the two poles with gravity. I
Sci-fi
loved that.
nerd.
You were entertained by the film.
I was very entertained.
Now, was that because you kept your expectations low, or do you think that objectively?
You know what? We've discussed this, you know, ad nauseum throughout the two reviews here, but you go in with a popcorn film with certain expectations, and bottom line, you want to be entertained, but you don't want to feel like a moron afterwards. Like something like Independence Day, you feel like a jackass for putting up with, or any select Michael Bay films, because the script is so lowbrow and it's so stupid, and there is so much nonsense being thrown at you that, you know, I actually enjoyed the script. Do I think it's a masterpiece? No. But I enjoyed the film and I enjoyed the script, and I wasn't as harsh on it as you are, but I don't think you were that harsh in the first place. Here we are with the fabulous owners of Carmine Street Comics that allowed us to shoot our Superman show here today. And introduce yourself, gentlemen.
My name's John Gorga. I'm one of the owner-operators here at Carmine Street Comics.
My name's Mike Novo, and I don't do anything in my spare time. I just sleep.
Well, once again, I wanted to thank you gentlemen for allowing us to film here. Just really quick, what is your favorite comic book movie of all time?
Man, maybe I have to run with the first Ninja Turtle movie they put out in 1990.
Elias Codius as Casey Jones.
Yeah,
Man,
it's
yeah.
pretty awesome.
He's pretty badass in the.
Get a really good actor to play Casey Jones.
The old Michael Keaton, Jack Nicholson Batman one.
Wow.
I didn't expect that. Although you are a big Batman fan.
I'm a huge Batman fan, and it's the first superhero movie I ever saw.
Guys, what superhero or comic book would you love to see in a movie?
Hands down, my opinion. I really think they should do an Aquaman movie. I feel like that'd be one of the most badass comic to movie things they can put out right now.
There's lots of indie stuff that never gets its due, but that's no fun. I mean, there's a fantastic thing that's like totally underground. It's been running since '98, slowly, called Berlin. It's just like an extremely painful. I mean, they kind of already made it in that movie Downfall. It's pretty much the same thing, like watching Hitler rise and watching the rest of society fall, as opposed to watching
Jason Lutz stuff.
Yeah, the Jason Lutz stuff.
Really good.
It's really good.
Before we go, what's some things that you guys would like to talk about with your store and how to, what people should know that have never been to Carmine Street Comics?
Well, let me see. First time, we want people to know that we're really proud to be sort of bridging the gap between the worlds of indie and indie underground and mainstream, which is tremendously evidenced by the answers we just gave. I mean, you love a lot of indie stuff. I love a lot of indie stuff. You love mainstream. I love indie. I'm a little bit more of an indie guy. You're a little bit more of a mainstream guy. And the customer base reflects that. We kind of noticed at the store where we were managers for 2 years that the customer base wasn't like people were reading only DC or even only DC and Marvel. We were increasingly beginning to see people who liked in between.
So there's a lot of people who pick up just indie stuff, people that don't even like the capes and tights stuff. There's also an awesome subscription service that we provide. You can sign up with us online, have a pull list set up for you, don't miss anything every week, and then get 20% off everything you ever buy with us all the time.
As long as Diamond doesn't fuck you.
Exactly.
Right.
Yep.
Once again, guys, thank you very much. That was Mike and John from Carmine Street Comics. Be a good New Yorker or be a good tourist. Stop down, visit them, and see what's going on.
All right, so that ends our discussion on the Superman Redux, I guess is what we're calling this, the reboots, whatever. And check us out on thisisinfamous.com. Check out our Google Plus page now. We have a Google Plus page.
Wow.
And yes, we do. In fact, we have 2 of them. We have a group or a circle, they call it, and we have a separate account. So go find us on Google Plus. So we have a Twitter account, we got a Google Plus account, and we got the Facebook group, and we're all on Facebook, and we're all on Twitter, we're all on Google Plus. Friend us, let us be in your circle. I'm exhausted. Thank you, Carmine Street Comics. Adieu.
Okay, I guess.